Like I've never seen someone walk into a show.
I've never seen more pom-pom waving in my life. Seriously.
Really?
The B- is not pom-pom.
Have you guys watched the offensive line the last 2 years?
I did. I just said that I didn't get exactly what I wanted.
Yeah, he said it.
I just said it. I
you.
did not. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was upset.
That's my whole problem, okay?
I mean, I would
beyond
like
the
for you
fact
to
that they
expand
made
it just a little bit.
Beyond the fact that they picked the wrong guy twice.
Yeah.
Actually, 3 times. Their offensive line's been terrible the last 2 years.
Bottom five in pass protection and run blocking last year.
They've done nothing to address that. I think Javon Foster down the road could be a nice answer. Javon Foster, the Missouri tackle. Oh, by the way, we have Eli Drinkwitz going on at 2:30. He's going to talk about Javon Foster and Mizzou, one of the hottest teams in college football right now. But I look at the offensive line because, to me, it's where it all begins. The line of scrimmage is where everything begins in football. I don't care what level you play at. And if you're not solid at the offensive line, you're going to have problems. I don't care what kind of people you have in places around them. And a perfect example, number one example, is the Chiefs against the Bucs in the Super Bowl in the throwaway season of 2020, which I've said all along, and I will continue to say at some point, we as a world are just going to say, forget 2020. We're going to go from 2019 to 2021. History. It's done.
I have some champions.
Well, it's got some champions. You can't take away. You can't take away.
I'm not even talking about sports. I'm just talking about life.
I'm going to say the Lakers got the bubble championship.
Lakers and Dodgers. I ain't letting go of either.
I see it, and I think look at that Chiefs-Bucks Super Bowl. They had injuries at the tackle spots, okay? They could not protect Patrick Mahomes. They couldn't score points on the Bucks. Period. They could not win a game of significance.
Let me give you another example, though. This year, they lost offensive linemen, the Chiefs did, coming down the stretch and had poor right tackle play the entire season and pretty much poor left tackle play in Donovan Smith. And then they lost Tooney coming down the stretch. And they went up against the Bosas, the Youngs of the world, the Eric Armsteads of the world, and they held up pretty damn good.
First off, the fact that they're the worst or some of the worst tackles, that's like, in the words of Lebowski, that's like your opinion, man.
Well, but it is.
Their left and right tackle were somewhere around the middle in the NFL, okay? And you guys can give Juwan all the grief you want. He is not a bad player. He does take a little liberties with getting off the jumper.
Well, he was the most penalized.
He was the most penalized tackle.
Right, but he is not
that counts.
He is in the top 16 as far as pass protection from the right tackle spot. I think it's a very easy crutch for you to say, their tackles are terrible. I don't think they're terrible. I think they're mid.
Here's my point: is that they were average or below average, and they lost Joe Tooney going into the most important time of the year when they're trying to win a championship. They go up to Buffalo looking like an underdog. They go to Baltimore looking like an underdog. And now look, the Chiefs are special. I totally get it.
Still had Creed Humphrey. Still had Trey Smith.
Yeah.
Still had the two tackles.
Saying, they've had subpar tackle play and lost a key interior lineman. That's significant. And when I look at this football team, yes, I agree. I think we would all agree. Offensive line needed to be addressed. They did not. Can they still get a 3rd and 2? Yeah, but it's still a main concern. But they got Ezra signed, and they went out and they got Mitch Morse.
Well, listen. I mean, Doug Peterson is a disciple of Andy Reid, right? He's a disciple, and Andy Reid does magic. I had never seen a coach do so much more with so much less. And maybe what Doug Peterson is saying is, look, we have an offensive line. We don't have to invest that much in there. Schematically, I can get Trevor in situations where we can get the wide receivers open, get him the ball. I mean, I don't know, because the fact that it hasn't been addressed, Matt Hayes, lets me know that he's got other plans, that maybe the offensive line isn't that more important than his scheme and what he's trying to put together. I mean, what else?
How do you feel about that, Mr. Former All-Pro right tackle?
I absolutely hate it. I'm so old school.
Yeah.
No.
Maybe I'm just I'm just a bitter person right now, but that's
maybe
it does appear to be so.
I don't think it is. I think
listen. You have taken on.
I see it this way as I'm the only one that's looking at this thing realistically, man.
All right, so
it's the same offensive line.
Yeah. All right, so and I guess this is the way I'm going to treat this, and this is probably going to be my mantra going through the offseason. Let's make this the 10-10 take, RJ, because this is how I have to look at it right now.
Now, Joe C's 10-10 tape. Slow smoked and served up by Sonny's Barbecue. Local pitmaster since '68.
They smoke it slow and serve it fast, and that's really what you need to know when you're coming in. You're hungry, you want a good meal, you want some good barbecue, and you got all those choices. Make sure you check out any one of your area Sonny's Barbecue right here on the First Coast. As I think about everything, and I think about this offseason, I think Doug Peterson probably should have been up for Coach of the Year for the second straight year because they had identical 9-8 records. He was a Coach of the Year nominee the year before when Brian Dable won it, and he came up short. We all know what happened. Now, this past season, they were 9-8, just barely above 500. But if I take a look at the sum total of this offseason, and that's what we're talking about right now, how has this team changed? Where are they at in your power rankings? What type of off-season grade would you give them? Well, they've added a starter, which you have to assume with their 23rd overall pick in Brian Thomas. They've added a starter in Gabe Davis. They now have both of those guys moved in. They've added Mitch Morse as a starter. They've added Eric Armstead as a starter. We can go down the line and name all the guys, the Darbys, the Savages, on and on and on. So I think to myself, how many brand new starters are on this football team going into this year? Name them. How many? What's the number? We're talking 6, 7, 8.
About 7, yeah, about 8, yeah.
And so think of that, okay? Think of out of a total of 22, you're approaching 50% new starters that are going to be pushed into this lineup. And think of what Doug was able to do with what we would consider subpar performers a season ago. That's why they had to go out and get starters. That's the 10-10 take. I'm giving Doug a little more credit when I look back and think about what they had to deal with. And now you do have more guys that have been plugged in. Yeah. So you – go ahead.
That's amazing to me that you pretzeled your way all the way into that. You think Doug did as good a job coaching this year as the previous season.
Yeah. Well, they had identical records.
That's some crazy logic, man.
Okay, I'm just telling you. I'm talking about with the amount of deficiencies they had in a lot of important spots.
I mean, if you want me to just say go Jags go, that's what I'll do.
No. I'm asking you to give me a counter to that. Okay, because think about it.
I mean, my counter is they had one of the worst passing offenses in the league. My counter is their play calling was horrible. My counter is you didn't draft well enough or do well enough in free agency to when you had injuries on the offensive line, you had guys that could step up and play.
Right. Okay. Remember our conversation.
That's my counter.
Yeah. Remember what our conversation is. We're talking about right now. I know what happened. I'm talking about.
But you said he was just as much Coach of the Year last year as he was the year before, considering what they had to replace.
There's a little smart A in there because I look at the number of starters that have been brought in this offseason to replace guys that were a little less than. You look back at last year, was Darius and Rayshon Jenkins doing their job? Well, those two starters are gone. Was Luke Fortner doing his job?
Darius Williams played pretty well last year. In fact, you can make an argument that outside of Josh Allen and Trayvon Walker late, he played as well as anybody on the defense.
Well, I would agree with the first half of the season, but if you want to get to the second half of the season, which is kind of where we're drilling down, December on, those guys got eaten alive in the secondary. Okay, that's what we're talking about. The absolute fail was from December 1 to early January, where they won 1 of 6 games. They only needed to win 2 of 6 to get in the playoffs, and they didn't. So I'm being a little bit of a smart A when I say Doug Peterson did a great job. But if you take a look, Darius replaced, Rayshon replaced. They go and get Eric Armstead to man the middle because they didn't have anybody to man the middle. They replaced Luke Fortner. They replaced Calvin Ridley because they couldn't re-sign him. They certainly would have liked to have had him back, but they had to do something there. They say goodbye to Zay. They bring in Gabe. You can just add all this up, and I'm just sitting here saying that's a lot of new blood on this football team that is going to be asked to come in and step up the performance level. And, Leon, that's the essence of it, man. This offseason was built to make sure that you didn't have the same failure you had a year ago.
Yeah, I agree. But it's kind of their fault, too, that they had to rebuild this season because of I always said their arrogance last year. When they could have addressed a lot of these issues in free agency and in the draft if they kept their foot on the gas. You know, they thought they had arrived, and then they let some things slip by the wayside. So now they had to rush this season to make up for the damage that they made last year. So, I mean, it's partly their fault. And then to not execute as well as they should have executed down the stretch during playoff time is just atrocious. Yeah. It's embarrassing.
And that's why I'm not going to say half of a staff, but a big portion of the staff got wiped out.
Yeah, get rid of it.
Because they just absolutely had to change it up. Now, the offense shares in the blame too. We can't just say this.
Trevor didn't play well.
Yeah, this was not just an isolated defensive problem.
No, Trevor didn't play well at all. Despite the offensive line's lackluster play, he still was. I don't think they held him accountable enough. Trevor, in a lot of games when he was healthy, was still bad. Now, you tried to give him an exit area, for his poor play, and said it was concussions and injuries and all that kind of stuff. But we had seen enough of Trevor to say that he wasn't playing as well as he should have been playing.
I don't know if I would say he played bad. I would say his ball security was bad. There's no doubt about that. 100% on that. I agree with that. I don't think he was playing bad. I think the way he threw the ball, the way he was throwing on time, I don't think that was a problem. I think the problem is structurally with the offense and the fact that he couldn't hold on to the ball.
Right.
Both things that are both highly fixable.
Right. Oh, yeah. And so the two things that you're talking about are legit, warranted. We don't know if the offense is going to change play calling wise, scheme wise. We really don't know. Trevor gave press a vote of confidence when he came back to start the offseason conditioning. And so we're going to find out whether that's going to change or not. But that does need to change.